Let's talk about the discussion, and similar to with the hypotheses, I'm very happy with this old guide of mine which shows you the basic ingredients of what must go into the discussion. You don't have to write a paragraph for each of these, but you need to make sure each of these is included and in this order. The way that research report writing is often taught, and you might see this in other guides, is as an hourglass shape. That the introduction begins very generally with your literature review and then becomes narrower and narrower until you're talking about your specific study and the specific hypotheses. And then the discussion is the opposite, and it kind of expands and starts with what you've found and what it means for the hypotheses and what it means for the method you just did and what it means for the literature in general. This is the hourglass shape of a research report. So this is what's behind a lot of my advice here in terms of your discussion structure and the discussion ingredients. And here are some exemplars again. You can have just a very short paragraph recapping the key results. You don't use p-values anywhere in the discussion. You don't use means, definitely not. And focus on the key results, the priority results that you'll talk about more. If you've got lots of results, but some of them didn't even speak to hypotheses, then you might want to leave them out of this very quick recap of things. The next part of a discussion is relating what you found to the hypotheses and the meaning of what was found, describing the meaning of what was found. And the most annoying thing that can happen here is when someone says, oh yeah, the first hypothesis was confirmed, or H1 and H2 were confirmed, but H4 wasn't. Can you see how annoying numbering hypotheses is now? Don't do that. Talk in meaningful, precise terms about what was found and what it means in relation to the study that was done. Okay, no numbering hypotheses. I suppose the person doing things like this thinks they're connecting the logical threads, and in a way they are, but again, they're setting a puzzle for the reader, which is rude. There's no other way to, it's rude. You know, to work out what I just said, you're going to have to flip back a few pages or scroll back, because I'm not telling you what hypothesis 1 was. I'm just telling you it was a hypothesis. It's rude. Don't do it. Okay. Explain how what was found challenges or moves beyond what was previously found. And there's an exemplar there. Specific findings related to specific prior findings or work, claims, theories. Detailed, precise language. That's how you do it. You let AI loose on this, it's going to give you this vague nonsense. These findings align closely with prior research, no citation, confirming the anticipated effects across conditions. These results corroborate earlier studies suggesting that the same mechanisms are at play. Throwaway sentences, AI generated, no marks. Don't do that. Think back to the purpose of a research report. It's not necessarily to just accurately record I won't do that voice again, to accurately record a study and its findings and present them in a coherent manner. It's this second bit, to communicate to the world what your study did that was novel and the unique contribution it makes. So in that context, these sentences in red are I was going to say garbage. They're worse than that. They're destructive. They are destructive. Because if you have sentences like that in your discussion, what you're essentially doing is saying, communicating is, this report had no purpose. We just did what was done before and found what was found before, and it's, okay? No, don't do that. You're completely undermining the purpose of the report. Everyone seems to like this align word. Our results align. This is what AI comes up with. It seems to be the most popular rubbish way of saying something. And you know what? The word align means you found exactly what was found before. And critically, it's suggesting that you did what was done before. Even if the results are similar in nature to what was found before, you used a different method. Okay? So this aligning nonsense erases, makes invisible all those differences. All that work you did early on taking notes about the difference between our study and previous studies is erased with this nonsense rhetoric. So be very, very careful about how you're promoting the unique findings of the research, and saying that they align does not. And then towards the end of a discussion, you need to qualify the impact of the findings. In a lot of research report writing guides, it says something like, do a hatchet job on the report, throw in some criticisms, destroy it. And this is the wrong message. You should not be saying, oh, right, I've got to finish every research report by completely undermining all my effort, by completely undermining the method and results, by attacking it. Okay, don't do that. I never use the word criticize in my research report guides. You've got to qualify the reach or the impact. What was done that could be done a bit better, and actually say that. Don't just throw a rock and say, yeah, that wasn't ideal. How could it be improved? If you can't think of a way to improve it, get rid of the criticism. It's not a fair criticism, okay? Make sure it is actually something which is part of the scope of the assignment. Don't just say, well, this needs to be done on a different sample or more widely. Well, why? You're just asking different questions, and that's not really a qualification either, okay? But more on that now, because the criticisms that are most weak, very poor, and that are worth absolutely no marks usually relate to the sample. A throwaway suggestion of a different sample or a completely different study or focus. For example, the suggestion relates to noise or diversity. You know what's wrong with all these suggestions? As our sample, we're all psychology students, the study needs to be done again with a more diverse sample. The rooms, this is true of every study ever conducted. And I've even seen plagiarism cases where people use the same throwaway final paragraph in every research report. Across 3 semesters, I saw one. And in some semesters, occasionally a marker gave them marks, but in most, thankfully, they were like, well, I'm not giving that any marks, because that's true of everything. It's a nonsense, throwaway criticism. This idea that the study room's being noisy is like just waving a flag at the marker saying, I don't understand random allocation. So even in that one study room, my tutorial room was noisy. I didn't realize that conditions 1, 2, 3, and 4 were scattered across the room. And in the 10 o'clock class, when the room was quiet, random allocation. So you know what? Noisiness leads to noise in the data. That's true. But it's not going to affect the comparison between the conditions. And that's kind of what you're aiming for. Something that relates to a specific finding, a specific comparison. If you can find a criticism or a qualification which perhaps questions that outcome, yeah, you might be onto something, and it might definitely be worth talking about. Make sure it's threaded with the rest of the paper, so it's not just this surprise paragraph that comes out of nowhere that, you can anticipate what's going to happen. You're looking for a systematic issue, something that is going to affect one condition but not another. Not this general, the room was noisy, the participants weren't diverse enough. No, it's nonsense. But you know what? There was a problem with condition 1 that condition 2 didn't have. That's what you're looking for. If you can find something like that, then it leads neatly on to future research. Because again, future research can be a throwaway too, and just, more needs to be done, some nonsense like that. Or you can make it a really clear statement about what the next method could be and actually solve the problem or the qualification that you just raised. Solve it. Beautiful way to end a report. Very generous way to end a report. So this business of threading in the introduction, it needs to continue in the discussion. These threads follow all the way through to relating everything that was found to prior research and qualifying, what might not have been done that well or needed something more, needed another condition. What's the next logical step for it? The threads continue all the way through the discussion. You should not introduce new papers in the discussion, okay? It's like bringing in a character out of nowhere that solves the movie's problems. The emperor's alive and we don't know why. What? It's just going to ruin things. People, that's bullshit. It's not going to sit well. And also, it smacks of something that's fairly anti-scientific, which is you've set up your hypotheses, you've derived them from the literature, you've got a logical flow, you've got an explanation for things, but you want to bring in something that you failed to mention. It's like the astrologer saying, oh yes, when I said you'd have a sore arm, what I actually meant was sore leg. What? That's not scientific. Don't do it, okay? No new papers in the discussion. You find a new paper as part of the writing process and you want to use it, you're going to have to build it into the introduction, or you're just going to have to let it go, okay? You're going to have to go back and create the thread all over again, which you can do if it's a really good find, but yeah, I don't recommend you just have things suddenly appearing. And you link your qualifications and future studies to those threads. Make it all very coherent. Don't give the marker, the reader, the impression that you're just kind of sticking bits, large pieces on. Make that last paragraph that leads to future research heavily threaded. It's all gonna make sense. Now, once that's done, your discussion's complete. Email it to yourself, save it as a separate backup, and you're nearly there. You're nearly finished at this stage.